The blood on her white lace gloves told a story she could not speak aloud. And when Benjamin Everett pushed open the heavy wooden doors of the chapel that scorching August afternoon in 1883, he found her there in the last pew, shaking like a leaf in a thunderstorm. Redding, California was a town built on copper mines and cattle, where the heat pressed down on everything like an iron skillet and secrets festered in the dry air. Benjamin had ridden in 3 days prior with a herd destined for the stockyards, his leather chaps covered in trail dust, and his dark hair curling against his neck from sweat. He was 26 years old, tall and lean with eyes the color of oak bark, and he had seen enough of the world to recognize suffering when it sat weeping in a house of God. The woman did not turn when his boots echoed against the pine floorboards. Her shoulders trembled beneath a dress the color of midnight, her auburn hair falling loose from its pins. She pressed her bloodied hands to her face, and the sound of her crying filled the small chapel like a hymn of pure anguish. Benjamin removed his hat and approached slowly, the way he might approach a wounded animal. He slid into the pew beside her, leaving a respectful distance between them, and set his hat on his knee. The late afternoon sun streamed through the simple glass windows, painting everything in shades of amber. "Madam," he said quietly, his voice rough from days on the trail, "let me help you heal." She startled, her hands dropping to reveal a face of extraordinary beauty marred by tears and terror. Her eyes were the pale green of new grass after rain, rimmed red from crying. She looked at him as though he might be an apparition, her lips parting but no sound emerging. "I am not here to cause you harm," Benjamin continued, keeping his voice steady and low. "Whatever has happened, you do not have to face it alone. You cannot help me," she whispered, her accent refined, Eastern perhaps. "No one can. Try me." She looked down at her stained gloves and seemed to realize for the first time what he must see. A small, broken sound escaped her throat. "He is dead. My husband is dead, and they will say I killed him." Benjamin felt his chest tighten. He had expected many things, but not this raw confession. "Did you?" "No." The word came out fierce, her green eyes meeting his with sudden fire. "But I wanted to. God help me. I wished him dead 1,000 times, and now he is, and I am glad." The honesty of it struck him like a physical blow. He studied her carefully, noting the way she held herself rigid despite the trembling, the purple shadow beneath her left eye that makeup could not quite hide, the way her right hand cradled her left as though protecting an injury. "Where is he now?" "At our ranch, 3 miles east. I rode here when I found him because I could not bear to stay in that house another moment with his body." She drew a shuddering breath. "Someone shot him through the window while he ate his breakfast. The marshal will think it was me. He beat me last night, you see. The whole town heard me screaming. Martha Henley from the Mercantile saw my face this morning when I went for flour. She saw what he did to me." Benjamin's jaw clenched. He had known men like her husband, men who thought their wives were property to be disciplined like animals. "What is your name?" "Amelia Owens." She said it like an admission of guilt. "I am Benjamin Everett. I work cattle, but I have some experience with the law." This was not entirely true, but he had ridden with enough marshals and sheriffs to understand how investigations worked. "If you did not kill him, then someone else did. We need to find out who before the marshal decides you are convenient. Why would you help me? You do not know me." He looked at her for a long moment, at the fear and hope warring in her expression, at the blood on her gloves and the bruises on her skin. "Because I believe you, and because no one should have to suffer alone." Something shifted in her face, a crack in the armor of her despair. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks, but these seemed different somehow, less hopeless. "I do not even know where to begin. We begin by going back to your ranch and looking at what happened. Then we find the marshal and tell him together. If you run or hide, you look guilty. If you face this head-on, you might have a chance." Amelia nodded slowly, her fingers twisting in her stained gloves. "I am afraid. Fear is not the same as guilt." Benjamin stood and offered her his hand. After a moment's hesitation, she took it and he helped her to her feet. She was tall for a woman, her eyes nearly level with his chin. This close, he could see the delicate line of her jaw, the graceful curve of her neck, the way her breathing came too fast and shallow. "Can you ride?" he asked. "Yes. My horse is tied outside." They walked out together into the blazing heat. Reading shimmered in the afternoon sun, the main street dusty and nearly empty during the hottest part of the day. Amelia's mare was a pretty chestnut with a white blaze, and Benjamin's gelding stood nearby, flicking his tail at flies. They mounted up and rode east, following the road that led out of town toward the scattered ranches that dotted the valley. The silence between them was heavy, but not uncomfortable. Benjamin watched Amelia from the corner of his eye, noting the way she sat her horse with easy grace despite her evident distress. Whatever her circumstances, she was no hothouse flower unused to physical work. "How long were you married?" he asked as they crested a low rise. 2 years. "We met in Sacramento. He was charming at first, attentive. My father had just died and I had no other family. Thomas seemed like salvation." Her voice was flat, drained of emotion. "The first time he hit me was 3 months after our wedding. It became worse from there." "Did you tell anyone?" "Who would believe me?" Thomas was well liked in town. He donated to the church, played cards with the marshal, smiled and joked with everyone. They saw what he wanted them to see. She paused. "Last night was the worst it had ever been. He broke my finger." She held up her left hand, showing him the swollen digit. "I fought back for the first time. I hit him with a cast iron pan and he laughed. He told me I was welcome to try harder, that it excited him." Rage burned in Benjamin's gut, hot and fierce. He deserved what he got, perhaps. "But I did not kill him, and that is the truth I must make others believe." The Owens ranch came into view, a modest spread with a main house, barn, and several outbuildings. Cattle grazed in the distant pastures and chickens scratched in the yard. Everything looked peaceful and ordinary, which somehow made it worse. Benjamin tied his horse beside Amelia's at the hitching post and followed her up the porch steps. The front door stood ajar. Amelia pushed it open with visible reluctance, and they stepped into the dim interior. The house was well furnished, almost elegant, with lace curtains and polished wood furniture. And in the kitchen, visible through an open doorway, Thomas Owens sat slumped over the table in a pool of dried blood. Benjamin approached carefully, his boots loud in the stillness. The dead man was perhaps 40, heavyset with thinning brown hair. The bullet had entered through the window behind him and struck him in the back of the head. Death would have been instantaneous. Benjamin examined the window, noting the shattered glass scattered across the floor. "This happened when?" he asked. "Early this morning, around 6. I was upstairs. I heard the shot and came down to find him like this." Amelia stood in the doorway, her arms wrapped around herself. "I did not touch him. I ran." Benjamin stepped outside and walked around the house to examine the ground beneath the kitchen window. The earth was hard and dry, but he found what he was looking for: boot prints in the dust. Someone had stood here for some time, judging by the scuff marks. The shooter had been at least 6 feet tall, based on the angle of the shot and the height of the window. "How tall are you, Amelia?" 5 feet and 7 inches. He nodded. "The person who did this was considerably taller. That works in your favor." He studied the prints more carefully. "These are ranch boots, probably size 11 or 12. Do you recognize them?" She came to look, kneeling in her black dress despite the dust, Her eyes narrowed. "These look like the boots our foreman wears, Wade Carson. Where is he now? I do not know. He lives in the bunkhouse with the other hands, but I have not seen anyone today." She stood, brushing dirt from her skirt. "Wade has worked here for 6 months. Thomas hired him from a ranch near Shasta. Did he and Thomas get along? I suppose so. Thomas trusted him to manage the cattle operation." She hesitated. "But Wade was always kind to me. When Thomas would rage, Wade would find excuses to send me on errands to get me away from the house. I thought he was simply being decent, or he was planning something." Benjamin started toward the bunkhouse, a long, low building set back from the main house. The door was unlocked, and inside they found 6 bunks, personal belongings, and signs of recent occupation. But no men. "Where are all your ranch hands?" "Thomas sent most of them to move cattle to higher pasture 3 days ago. They were not due back until tomorrow. Only Wade stayed behind to watch the place." Benjamin felt pieces clicking into place. "Wade would have known Thomas beat you. He would have known you were alone here with just your husband, and he made sure no one else would be around to witness what happened." Amelia's eyes widened. "You think Wade killed Thomas to protect me? It fits, but we need proof, and we need to find him before he runs." Benjamin paused, studying her face. "Unless you asked him to do this." "No." She met his gaze squarely. "I swear to you I had no part in planning Thomas's death. I wanted to leave him to run away, but I never asked anyone to kill him." He believed her. There was something in her eyes, a fundamental honesty that he trusted instinctively. "Then we need to find the marshal and tell him what we have discovered. After that, we locate Wade Carson." They rode back to Reading together, and Benjamin found himself hyper-aware of her presence beside him. Despite everything, despite the horror of the morning and the danger that still surrounded her, Amelia sat tall in her saddle, her chin raised. She was stronger than she knew, and that strength called to something in him. The marshal's office occupied a small building near the center of town. Marshal Eugene Davis was a gray-haired man in his 50s with shrewd eyes and a weathered face. He listened to their story without interruption, occasionally glancing at the blood still staining Amelia's gloves. "Wade Carson, you say?" Davis drummed his fingers on his desk. "I know him. Quiet fellow, keeps to himself. You are saying he shot Thomas Owens through the window this morning?" "The evidence suggests it," Benjamin said carefully. "The boot prints match, and he is the only ranch hand who was present. He also had motive. He witnessed Thomas abusing his wife." Davis turned his attention to Amelia. "Mrs. Owens, did you know about this plan?" "No, sir. I was as shocked as anyone to find my husband dead." She spoke clearly despite the tremor in her voice. "I will not pretend to mourn him, but I did not arrange his murder. You have bruises on your face and a broken finger. Half the town heard you screaming last night." Davis's expression was unreadable. "That gives you motive as well." "It does," Amelia agreed, "but the physical evidence does not support me as the shooter. I am too short and the boots are too large." Benjamin found prints beneath the window. The marshal considered this. "Benjamin Everett, is it? You are the new fellow working the cattle drive." "Yes, sir. I have some experience with investigations and I wanted to help Mrs. Owens establish the truth." Davis studied them both for a long moment. "All right, I will ride out to the Owens place and see for myself. Mrs. Owens, you will stay in town where I can find you. Mr. Everett, you are welcome to come with me if you like." "I would appreciate that, sir." They made arrangements for Amelia to stay at the boarding house, run by a widow named Mrs. Chen, a stern but kind woman who asked no questions when the marshal explained the situation. Benjamin saw the exhaustion in Amelia's face as they left her there, but also a glimmer of relief that someone was finally listening. The ride back to the ranch with Marshal Davis was quiet. The lawman examined everything Benjamin had found, took measurements, and studied the scene with professional thoroughness. In the bunkhouse, he discovered something. Benjamin had missed a half-written letter tucked under Wade Carson's mattress. Davis read it aloud, his voice grave. "I cannot stand by and watch any longer. Every bruise, every cry, every time she flinches when he raises his hand, it eats at me. She deserves better than this monster. Someone has to stop him. Someone has to save her." The letter was unsigned, but the intent was clear. Davis folded it carefully and slipped it into his pocket. "Well, that is as close to a confession as we are likely to get. Now we just need to find Carson." They split up to search the ranch and surrounding area. Benjamin checked the barn and found Wade's horse missing, along with his saddle and bedroll. The foreman had fled, probably right after the shooting. With a several-hour head start, he could be anywhere. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and purple, Benjamin and Davis returned to town empty-handed. They would put out word to neighboring towns and hope someone spotted Carson. Until then, all they could do was wait. Benjamin found himself walking to the boarding house as twilight deepened into night. Mrs. Chen answered his knock and informed him that Mrs. Owens was sitting on the back porch. He found Amelia there in the gathering darkness, staring out at the hills beyond town. "The marshal found a letter," he said, settling into the chair beside her. "Wade wrote about wanting to stop your husband. It is not a full confession, but it helps establish that he had motive independent of you." Amelia nodded slowly. "So Wade killed Thomas because he could not bear to watch me suffer any longer, and now he has ruined his own life trying to save mine. He made his choice, a choice I never asked him to make." She turned to look at Benjamin, her face pale in the dimness. "Why are you still here?" "You have done what you promised. You helped me face the marshal. You could walk away now." "I do not want to walk away." The words hung between them, weighted with meaning neither of them was quite ready to examine. Amelia's eyes searched his face, and he saw confusion there and something else, a tentative hope. "You do not know me," she said softly. "I am a widow under suspicion of murder. I am damaged, broken by 2 years of brutality. Why would you stay?" Benjamin reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand in his. Her fingers were cold despite the warmth of the evening. "I see a woman who survived something terrible with her spirit intact. I see courage and honesty and strength. That is worth staying for." Tears glittered in her eyes. "I do not know how to trust anymore. I do not know how to believe that anyone could want me as I am now." "Then let me show you." He squeezed her hand gently. "One day at a time, Amelia. I am not going anywhere." She surprised him by leaning forward and resting her forehead against his shoulder. He felt her breathe out, a long, shuddering exhalation that seemed to release some of the tension she carried. Carefully, he wrapped his arm around her, holding her while the night deepened around them. They sat that way for a long time, not speaking, just existing together in the quiet. Benjamin felt something shifting inside him, pieces of himself rearranging to make room for this woman and her wounded heart. He had not come to Redding looking for love, but here it was anyway, fragile and fierce and frightening. The next 3 days passed in a strange, suspended state. Amelia remained at the boarding house while the marshal continued his investigation. Benjamin spent his days working with the cattle outfit that had brought him to town, but his evenings belonged to Amelia. They walked together through town, sat on the porch of the boarding house talking until the stars came out, shared meals at the small restaurant near the hotel. Slowly, carefully, Benjamin learned who Amelia truly was beneath the fear and trauma. She was 24 years old, originally from Boston, well-educated and sharp-witted. She loved books and horses, had a talent for painting wildflowers, and possessed a dry sense of humor that surfaced more often as the days passed. She spoke of her father, a teacher who had died of pneumonia, and the desperation that had led her to accept Thomas Owens's proposal. She showed Benjamin her broken finger, which he splinted carefully with wood and cloth, his large hands surprisingly gentle. And Benjamin found himself telling her things he had never shared with anyone. About growing up on a hardscrabble farm in Missouri, about losing his mother to cholera when he was 15, about the years drifting west working ranches and cattle drives because he had no reason to settle anywhere, about the loneliness that dogged him despite the camaraderie of the trail, the sense that he was always searching for something he could not name. "Maybe you found it," Amelia said one evening as they sat watching the sunset from a hill overlooking town. The heat had broken slightly, and a breeze stirred her auburn hair where it fell loose around her shoulders. She had stopped pinning it up so severely, and Benjamin loved the way it caught the light. "Maybe I did," he agreed quietly. His heart hammered in his chest as he reached over and took her hand. This time she laced her fingers through his without hesitation, and the simple intimacy of it made his throat tight. "I am afraid," she admitted. "Not of you, of this. Of what happens when the investigation is over and real life begins again. I do not know how to be anything other than Thomas's wife. That was my identity for 2 years. Then we will figure out who you are together." Benjamin turned to face her fully. "I know this is fast. I know we have only known each other a few days. But I am not in the habit of lying, so I am going to tell you the truth. I am falling in love with you, Amelia Owens. Maybe I started falling the moment I saw you in that chapel, and I want the chance to see where this goes." Her green eyes were bright with tears. "I want that too, so much. But what if Wade is never found? What if people always believe I had something to do with Thomas's death? Then we will deal with that together. I am not afraid of gossip or suspicion. I am only afraid of losing you before we have a chance to begin." Amelia leaned in and kissed him, a soft, tentative press of lips that sent electricity racing through Benjamin's entire body. He cupped her face in his hands, mindful of the fading bruises, and kissed her back with all the tenderness he possessed. She tasted like honey and hope, and when they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathing hard. "I have never been kissed like that," she whispered, "with gentleness. You deserve gentleness. You deserve everything good in this world." Benjamin rested his forehead against hers. "And I intend to spend as long as you will let me proving that to you." The investigation broke open on the 5th day. A rancher from Shasta rode into town with news Wade Carson had been spotted near the Oregon border. Marshal Davis immediately organized a posse, and Benjamin volunteered to ride with them. Amelia tried to hide her fear when he told her, but he saw it anyway. "Come back to me," she said as they stood in front of the boarding house in the pre-dawn darkness. "Promise you will come back. I promise." He kissed her one more time, trying to pour all his feeling into it. "Wait for me." The posse rode hard, tracking Wade through increasingly rugged country. They caught up with him 3 days later in a narrow canyon, his horse lame and his supplies exhausted. Wade Carson was a tall, rangy man in his early 30s, with sad eyes and calloused hands. He did not resist when they surrounded him. "I did it," he told them simply as Marshal Davis placed him in irons. "I shot Thomas Owens. Mrs. Owens had nothing to do with it. She did not even know I planned it. I just could not stand by and let him hurt her anymore." "Why did you run?" Davis asked. "Because I knew I would hang for it and I was afraid. But I am done running. I will face what I have done." Wade looked at Benjamin with those sad, tired eyes. "Is she all right, Mrs. Owens?" "She is safe," Benjamin said, Good, that is all that matters. She is free of him now. She can have a real life. Wade smiled faintly. It was worth it. They brought Wade back to Reading to stand trial. Benjamin rode straight to the boarding house when they arrived, not even stopping to wash off the trail dust. Amelia flew down the porch steps when she saw him, and he caught her in his arms, lifting her off her feet as she buried her face in his neck. "You came back," she said against his skin. "I told you I would." He set her down gently but did not let go. "It is over, Amelia." Wade confessed to everything. He made it clear you had no knowledge of his plans. You are free. She pulled back to look at him, tears streaming down her face. "Truly, truly. The marshal is closing the investigation. You are cleared of all suspicion." Benjamin brushed her tears away with his thumbs. "You can start over now, fresh, free. With you." The hope and vulnerability in her voice made his chest ache. "If you will have me. I know I am just a cowhand with nothing to my name but a horse and saddle." "I cannot offer you much. You offer me yourself," she interrupted. "Your kindness and your strength and your beautiful heart. That is worth more than all the ranches in California." Benjamin kissed her there in the street with half of Reading watching, and he did not care who saw. This woman had become essential to him in the space of a week, as necessary as breathing. When they finally broke apart, both of them were grinning like fools. The trial was swift. Wade Carson pleaded guilty to the murder of Thomas Owens, and while the judge had some sympathy for his motives, the law was clear. Wade was sentenced to 15 years in prison, a lighter sentence than he might have received given the circumstances. He accepted it with quiet dignity, and when Amelia visited him before he was transferred to San Quentin, he told her he would do it again without hesitation. "You are free now," Wade said through the bars of his cell. "Be happy, Mrs. Owens. That is all I ever wanted." Amelia wept as she left the jail, and Benjamin held her while she grieved for the man who had tried to save her at the cost of his own freedom. But underneath, the grief was relief and the growing excitement of possibility. Her life was her own again. The practical matters took time to sort through. The ranch belonged to Amelia as Thomas's widow, but she wanted no part of it. Too many bad memories haunted that house, that land. She sold it for a fair price to a family from Sacramento, and used the money to buy a small property on the edge of Reading, 10 acres with a modest house, a barn, and a creek running through it. "I want to start fresh," she told Benjamin as they stood on the porch of the new house. It was October now, the air finally cooling after the brutal summer heat. "This place has no ghosts. It can be whatever we make it." Benjamin asked, his heart in his throat. Amelia turned to face him, her green eyes clear and certain. "Marry me, Benjamin Everett." "I know it is too soon by conventional standards and people will talk, but I do not care. I love you. I want to build a life with you. Say yes." He swept her into his arms and spun her around, both of them laughing. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." They were married in the same chapel where Benjamin had first found her weeping, but this time Amelia wore a dress the color of cream and carried wildflowers. The ceremony was small, just a few friends from town and Mrs. Chen, who had become a fierce champion of Amelia's innocence. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Benjamin kissed his bride with infinite tenderness, and she kissed him back with joy. That night in their new house, Amelia came to him without fear. Benjamin had been careful in their courtship, never pushing, always letting her set the pace. But now she was ready, and he showed her what love could be when it was freely given and received. He was patient and gentle, and when she cried afterward, they were tears of healing, not pain. "I did not know it could be like this," she whispered in the darkness. "I did not know I could feel safe and loved at the same time." Benjamin held her close, her head resting over his heart. You are safe with me, always, and loved beyond measure." They built their life together piece by piece. Benjamin worked cattle for neighboring ranches while Amelia tended their small property, planting a garden and raising chickens. She started painting again, setting up an easel on the porch to capture the mountains and wildflowers she loved. Benjamin would come home dusty and tired from long days working, and his heart would lift at the sight of her there, her hair glinting in the sun, so absorbed in her art that she did not hear him approach until he kissed her shoulder. Their first winter together was mild by California standards, but they spent the cold evenings curled together by the fire, reading or talking or simply existing in comfortable silence. Amelia's nightmares came less frequently as the months passed, and when they did, Benjamin was there to hold her until the fear subsided. In the spring, Amelia discovered she was pregnant. The news filled them both with equal parts joy and terror. Amelia was afraid of what pregnancy would mean, afraid that her body might fail, or that she would not be a good mother after everything she had endured. Benjamin soothed her fears as best he could, and together they prepared for the baby. Their son was born in October of 1884, exactly 1 year after their wedding. Samuel Thomas Everett came into the world squalling and red-faced, and when the midwife placed him in Amelia's arms, she wept with overwhelming love. Benjamin touched his son's tiny hand with a sense of awe, this perfect small person that he and Amelia had created together. "He is beautiful," Benjamin whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "He is ours," Amelia said, smiling up at her husband through her tears. "Our family." Samuel was a healthy, happy baby who filled their small house with noise and laughter. Benjamin proved to be a natural father, patient and playful, content to walk the floor at night when Samuel fussed, so Amelia could rest. Watching her husband with their son, Amelia felt her heart expand with love so fierce it almost frightened her. This was what she had been searching for without knowing it, this simple, perfect happiness. 2 years later, their daughter arrived. Rose Amelia Everett was born on a spring morning when the wildflowers bloomed across the hills, and she had her mother's green eyes and her father's dark hair. Samuel was fascinated by his baby sister, insisting on helping with everything from diaper changes to singing lullabies. Their small house felt even fuller now, bursting with life and love. Benjamin expanded their property gradually, buying adjacent land when it became available. He and Amelia built up a small herd of cattle and several good horses. It was not a grand operation, but it was theirs, earned through hard work and built on love. Amelia sold her paintings in town, and they became quite popular with travelers passing through on the railroad. Between that income and Benjamin's work, they lived comfortably if not lavishly. The years passed in a blur of seasons and small joys. Samuel grew tall and strong like his father, with a quick mind and kind heart. Rose was spirited and creative, always painting or making up elaborate stories. They were good children, raised with love and discipline in equal measure. Benjamin and Amelia taught them to work hard, to be honest, to stand up for what was right. Occasionally news would reach them of Wade Carson. He had become a model prisoner, teaching other inmates to read and write. The warden wrote to Amelia once, letting her know that Wade spoke of her with pride and was glad to hear she had found happiness. Amelia sent him books and letters, a small way to repay the sacrifice he had made. She hoped that someday he would be released and could start his own life over. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Benjamin woke before dawn and gently roused Amelia from sleep. He led her out to the porch where they had shared so many evenings, and they watched the sun rise over the mountains together. "You remember the first day we met?" he asked, his arm around her shoulders. Of course. You found me at my lowest moment and offered me hope. Amelia leaned into him. You saved my life, Benjamin. You saved mine too. I was just drifting before you, no purpose, no direction. You gave me a reason to stay in one place, to build something lasting. He turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. These 10 years with you have been the best of my life. You and our children are my whole world. And you are mine, Amelia said, tears gathering in her eyes. I never imagined I could be this happy, this free, this loved. You showed me what real love looks like, and you have given me more joy than I can put into words. They kissed as the sun painted the sky in brilliant colors. Two people who had found each other in the darkest moment and built a life filled with light. Behind them in the house, they could hear Samuel and Rose beginning to stir, their children's voices raised in some dispute that would require parental intervention. Amelia laughed and started to turn toward the house, but Benjamin caught her hand. Let them work it out for a minute. I want to look at you. I want to remember this moment exactly as it is. So they stood together watching the sun rise, their hands clasped, their hearts full. The past with all its pain had brought them to this perfect present, and the future stretched ahead bright with promise. Amelia had come to Reading a broken woman fleeing a nightmare, and Benjamin had been a drifter with nothing but a horse and an open road. Now they were husband and wife, parents, partners in every sense of the word. They had built a home, raised children, and created a love that would last all their days. Years later, when Samuel was grown and running the ranch with his father, when Rose had married and moved to San Francisco to pursue her art, when Benjamin's hair had gone gray and Amelia's face bore the lines of a life well lived, they would still sit together on that porch watching the sunset. And Amelia would remember the day Benjamin found her weeping in the chapel, how he sat beside her and offered to help her heal. He had kept that promise every single day since, through all the seasons of their life together. They had been blessed with 4 grandchildren by then, and the house that had once seemed so small now hosted frequent gatherings filled with laughter and chaos. Benjamin would watch his wife surrounded by their family, her face glowing with happiness, and feel a deep contentment settle over him. This was what he had been searching for all those years ago, this sense of belonging, of home, of love that endured through everything. On the evening of their 25th anniversary, the whole family gathered for a celebration. Samuel had arranged for a photographer to come from town, wanting to capture the moment. They all stood together in front of the house that love had built, Benjamin and Amelia at the center, their children and grandchildren arranged around them, 3 generations of joy. "Speech, Father," Samuel called out, grinning. Benjamin looked at his family, these people who existed because he had walked into a chapel one hot August day and found a woman who needed help. "I cannot take credit for all of this," he said honestly. "Your mother is the strongest, bravest, most loving person I have ever known. She took the worst thing that ever happened to her and turned it into something beautiful. She taught me what real courage looks like. Everything good in my life began the day I met her." Amelia was crying openly now, and Rose rushed over to embrace her. Benjamin pulled them both close, then Samuel joined in, and then the grandchildren, until they were all tangled together, laughing and crying and holding each other. The photographer captured the moment, pure love and joy frozen in time. That night, after everyone had gone home or to bed, Benjamin and Amelia sat together under the stars. She rested her head on his shoulder, and he held her close, marveling as he always did that this extraordinary woman had chosen to build a life with him. "No regrets?" he asked softly. "Not a single one," Amelia answered. "You gave me back my life, Benjamin." You showed me that I was worthy of love and kindness and happiness. Every good thing came from that moment in the chapel when you chose to sit beside me instead of walking away. I could never have walked away from you." He kissed the top of her head. "You were my destiny, Amelia. I just did not know it until I saw you." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars wheel overhead. The night was peaceful, filled with the sounds of crickets and the distant lowing of cattle. Somewhere an owl called, and one of their horses nickered softly in the barn. These were the sounds of home, the music of the life they had built together. As they finally rose to go inside, Benjamin took one last look at their land, the house where they had raised their children, the corrals where Samuel now trained horses, the garden where Amelia still grew her wildflowers. It was not a grand estate or a showplace ranch, but it was theirs, every inch of it earned and loved. And at the center of it all was the love between two people who had found each other when both were lost. Inside their bedroom, Amelia unpinned her hair and let it fall around her shoulders. It was streaked with silver now, but to Benjamin she was as beautiful as the day he first saw her. He came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist, meeting her eyes in the mirror. "I love you," he said simply. "More than words can say." "Show me," she whispered, turning in his arms. And he did, with the same tenderness and passion that had marked their love from the beginning. They came together in the darkness of their room, two souls perfectly matched, and in the joining was everything they had built: trust and love, and the kind of intimacy that only deepened with time. Afterward they lay tangled together, Amelia's head over Benjamin's heart, listening to its steady beat. "This is healing," she said softly. "Not just what you did for me in the beginning, but this, every day with you, every moment of choosing love over fear. You helped me heal, Benjamin, and then you kept healing me, and I will spend the rest of my life grateful for it." Benjamin felt his throat tighten with emotion. "You healed me too. I was broken in ways I did not even recognize until you showed me what wholeness could feel like. We saved each other." "Yes," Amelia agreed, smiling in the darkness. "We did." The morning sun rose golden over the California hills, illuminating the Everett ranch and the family who lived there. In the main house, Benjamin and Amelia Everett stirred and began another day of the life they had built together. There would be work to do there always, but there would also be laughter and love, and the deep satisfaction of a life well lived. Benjamin went outside to start his morning chores and paused on the porch, looking out at everything they had created. Behind him, he heard Amelia humming as she started breakfast, and the sound filled him with warmth. This was his home, his life, his love, and it had all begun with a single choice to sit beside a weeping woman in a chapel and offer to help her heal. That offer had become a promise, and that promise had become a lifetime. They had weathered storms and celebrated joys, raised children and built a legacy. And through it all, the love between Benjamin and Amelia had been the foundation, the bedrock on which everything else rested. It was a love born from compassion and trust, nurtured with patience and kindness, and strengthened by every challenge they faced together. As Benjamin headed toward the barn, he heard Samuel's voice calling out a greeting and saw Rose's carriage coming up the drive for an unexpected visit. His heart lifted at the sight of his family, these people who existed because he and Amelia had chosen each other. They had taken their brokenness and forged it into something beautiful and enduring. The chapel where it all began still stood in Redding, a simple building where people came to pray and seek comfort. Sometimes when Benjamin and Amelia rode into town, they would stop there, sitting in the same pew where they first met. They never stayed long, just a moment to remember and give thanks for the extraordinary gift they had been given, the gift of second chances, of healing, of love that transformed everything it touched. Their story was not one of grand adventure or dramatic gestures. It was quieter than that, more intimate. It was the story of two wounded souls who found each other and chose, every single day, to build something beautiful together. It was the story of how offering to help someone heal could change two lives forever. It was the story of love in its truest, most enduring form. And it was a story that would be told for generations in the Everett family, passed down to children and grandchildren and beyond. The story of how Benjamin found Amelia weeping in a chapel and sat beside her and said, "Let me help you heal." How those simple words became the foundation of a love that lasted a lifetime, a love that brought light into darkness and hope into despair. In the end, that was the greatest gift they gave each other, not just the healing or the love or the life they built, but the proof that even in the darkest moments, redemption was possible. That broken things could be made whole, that two lost souls could find their way home together. And that love, real love, could transform everything,